A few days ago, a student contacted me asking for help. This is a new student, a student that I haven't worked with before, and his message was, "Mr. Jerry, can you please help me with IELTS test? I have already taken it 2 times and I can't get past the 5 band score." Has this ever happened to you? Have you taken the IELTS test and can't get out of a certain band score that you think you can get above? This is not so uncommon. Many students try the IELTS test a number of times and get stuck at a certain level and can't reach what they really need. Hi, I'm Jerry with Global Connection ESL. In today's video, we're going to look at 3 tips to being successful with IELTS this year. These 3 tips, these 3 things that you must know will help you move higher on your band score. So before we jump into this lesson, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Go ahead and just hit the notification bell down below, and whenever I make new videos, you'll be notified, and I hope that will help you improve with your IELTS. So in today's lesson, we're going to look at 3 tips to reaching IELTS success. And we're going to go into detail for each one. Tip number 1 is that you must know what to expect. When I say that you must know what to expect, I mean that you really have to understand the test. You shouldn't take a test without understanding what it's all about first. So let me tell you just a little bit of an overview of the IELTS test. The IELTS test is an English language test that checks 4 language skills. 4 English language skills are listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And these 4 skills are what you must understand are built into this test. So let's look at listening first. The listening test for IELTS is 40 minutes long, but actually the listening recordings that you hear are only 30 minutes. And then you are given 10 minutes to transfer your answers from your notes onto the answer sheet. And you must understand this time. In the listening, there will be 4 different listenings that you will hear. Each listening has 10 questions, and that totals to 40 questions for the listening section. The listening test has 4 recordings that you will hear, and the first recording is a social conversation between 2 people, and it's not very difficult. The second part of the listening section is one person talking about something social, a social context of some sort. So one person talking. The third recording on IELTS is where you will have 2 or more people talking about something in an educational context. And then the last part of the listening for IELTS is a lecturer, a teacher, an expert giving a talk about some topic. And it's a topic you can be familiar with, but it's the most difficult part of the listening section. It's also very important for you to understand what types of questions you will see on the listening test. You might see where you have multiple choice. There are multiple choice questions, but there are so many different other question types. I would love for you to learn more about the listening section, so go ahead and check out this video here. It has more information about the listening test, and I hope it will help you. The second section of the IELTS test is the reading section. The reading section is challenging for so many students. The reading section has 3 passages, and those 3 passages have questions that you'll be asked after you read them. There are 40 questions altogether. So some passages might have 13, some passages might have 14 questions, but a total of 40 questions. And these 3 passages, you must read and answer the questions in 60 minutes. So that is an average of 20 minutes per reading passage. But the first one is easier and the last one is most difficult. So you might have a plan to read the first one in a faster speed. I want to also, just like the listening section, say that you must understand the different question types that you'll be facing. For the reading section, of course, you will have multiple choice again, but there are many other difficult question types that students struggle with. Matching headings is one of those. This is understanding the main idea for paragraphs, and so you must practice and understand how to deal with this question before you take the test, because it kills many students' scores. There's also summary completion, sentence completion, and for the reading test, just like the writing and the listening, you must follow the instructions very carefully. If it asks for 2 words and a number, then that's what you should write in your answer. And if you make a mistake in following the instructions, then you will not get the answers correct. So the reading section, 3 passages with 40 questions total, with quite a different variety of question types. Many students struggle with the reading section of IELTS. It's really challenging, especially if you're not a strong reader. If you'd like to know about some mistakes to avoid in the reading section, check out this video. To overview the next section of the IELTS test, we must look at IELTS writing. IELTS writing has 2 tasks. You must complete both tasks in 60 minutes. Task number 1 is only 1/3 of the points, and task number 2 is 2/3 of the points. And so generally students think to plan 20 minutes for task 1 and 40 minutes for task 2. Task 1 is where you will see a visual of some form. Perhaps it's a map. Maybe it's a bar chart or a pie chart. Other forms of diagrams. Perhaps you might even see stages for a process. You must look at this visual and explain it. Describe what is happening. And you must do that in 150 words or more in about 20 minutes. Many students find this especially difficult. And so when you understand how to prepare for IELTS Task 1, then you can be more effective at scoring well. And if you want to know more about Task 1, take a look at this video. It shares more information on how to be successful with IELTS Task 1. IELTS Task 2 is where you need to respond to a question prompt. Sometimes the prompt is asking about your opinion. Sometimes the prompt is asking for you to discuss a problem and present a solution. Sometimes you just need to tell the advantages and disadvantages of an issue. You are asked to write 250 or more words, and most students take about 40 minutes to write this task 2. Some students even choose to write task 2 first because it has more points. That is up for debate, but the truth is you must finish both task 1 and task 2 in 60 minutes if you hope to get a decent score, because if you only finish one of the tasks, you will not get a great score in the writing section. If you'd like to know more about writing for task 2, please take a look at this video. It will be helpful for planning well for writing task 2. Now let's take a look at an overview of the speaking part of the IELTS test. So far, we've looked at the listening, the reading, and the writing, and they're different than the speaking part. The listening, the reading, and the writing is where you will use a pencil and write your responses down on a paper. However, the speaking portion of the IELTS test is where you meet with a real human being, a real person. This is the IELTS examiner. And there are 3 parts to the speaking test. The first part is where you will share a little bit about yourself and answer some questions about familiar topics. The second part of the speaking test is where you will be given a card. And on the card, you will read a prompt and you will have a minute to think about how you're going to answer. Then you have up to 2 minutes to respond to the question. It's only you talking for part 2. And then in part 3 of the speaking test, you will have a discussion with the IELTS examiner where you answer questions about your opinion, your point of view, some advantages and disadvantages, and discuss potential issues in a deeper conversation about the topic from the question card. And you'll have to finish this speaking test in about 11 to 14 minutes. If you'd like to know more about the speaking portion of the IELTS test, check this video out. It has some good overview material for you. So we've looked at an overview of the listening, the reading, the writing, and the speaking sections of the IELTS test. You must understand what the test is like before you take it. Know what to expect. But I want you to go a little deeper than that. I want you to know what to expect in the marking criteria. When you prepare for the IELTS test, it's very important to know what the IELTS examiner is looking for. If you search online, there are so many great resources. Of course, my own blog site, website, YouTube videos has a lot of information, but there are so many great resources out there. Of course, IELTS.org, you can find a lot of resources available there. And of course, Cambridge and IDP, where all of the IELTS materials are produced, you can find resources and buy textbooks that tell you what is expected in the marking criteria. You must understand how you will be marked on your test in order to be effective at your test. If you'd like to know more about the marking criteria, take a look at this video. So we've looked at the first tip for IELTS success. Know what to expect. Now let's take a look at the second tip for IELTS success, and it is know what your weaknesses are. This is one of the key ways to improve your IELTS test scores and to improve your language skills if you understand what your weaknesses are. Honestly, it is difficult to see your own weaknesses. Sometimes when I'm preparing for something and I write something or I write a proposal for something, I don't always see where my writing could be improved. And so that's why it's so important to get some feedback from someone else. When you're preparing for IELTS, it's essential to get some feedback from someone else. I recommend that you get feedback from an expert who is familiar with IELTS and who also understands the structure of the English language, because the IELTS test is all about showing your proficiency with the English language. If you get feedback, please don't be defensive. Sometimes students say, "My teacher said this, but I understand that." If you listen to feedback and receive it with a humble heart and take action about it, you will start to improve your language skills more than you imagine. This is difficult for students to hear because none of us like to be told where we are doing bad. But if you really find out what you need to improve on, then you can work specifically on a plan to improve those weaknesses and get a higher band score. And many students who are successful will come back and tell you, "I understood how to work on my weaknesses, and that's how I succeeded." So I really think that this second tip here, know what your weaknesses are, is one of the most important, almost as important as number 3 that we're going to look at soon. Knowing your weaknesses will help you improve your language skills and your IELTS score. So look at what your weaknesses are, get some feedback from an expert, and make a plan to improve those weaknesses. Now for the third and final tip for today's lesson on how to have IELTS success. I've told you already that you must know what to expect, you must know what your weaknesses are, but this third tip I believe is probably the most important because it will help you finish. This third tip is to know why you are taking the IELTS test. If you know why, then it will motivate you to reach the finish line. As you're preparing for IELTS, you probably listen to many resources online with YouTube Talks and TED Talks and many great resources. One of the famous TED Talks is by a guy named Simon Sinek, and he talks about know your why. Maybe you want to see that video as well. It's a great story. If you know why you're doing something, you will have the motivation to reach the finish line even when it is difficult. So, why are you taking the IELTS test? Can you tell me in the comments below? Really like to know why you want to take the IELTS test. Many students have told me that they have connected IELTS to their dreams. They have a dream to get a degree from a foreign university speaking English, perhaps in the United States, perhaps in the UK, perhaps in Australia. And after getting this degree, they want to start a company or get a job at a company in their home country that will make an impact and improve life for their family and the community around them. I think this is a great dream. And many of those dreams that I've heard about are specific to the student's culture and community context. If you are clear about why you're taking the IELTS test, it will help you focus on which university to apply for and how to get the degree to reach your dream. I haven't talked so much in this video about the general IELTS test, but many students also want to take the general IELTS, and the general IELTS is something that's necessary if you want to immigrate and move to a country where you can work. This also can be a fantastic dream that will motivate you to get a good score on the IELTS general test. So know your why. If you know your why, then you can set clear dreams and steps, goals to reaching that. You can make a plan to get a higher band score. You can make a plan to put an application in for a university or for a company abroad. And you can get a degree and go back and reach the dream of making an impact in this world. Finally, if you know your why, it encourages others to support you. If you're taking a test just to get a test score, sometimes people don't know why you're doing it. But if you tell them, oh, I need this test so I can get a university degree in the UK or in the States, they will look at you like, oh wow, that's great. And they'll push you and they'll encourage you when you feel like giving up. And sometimes you will feel like giving up because it's a hard process. The IELTS test is a test that checks your English language proficiency. Learning a new language is very difficult. It's a long process and it takes a lot of motivation to stay until the end. So if you know your why for taking the IELTS test, you have a much greater chance of being successful. So maybe you are just getting started preparing for the IELTS test, or maybe you've been trying and have taken the IELTS test several times and just don't have the success that you want so far. These 3 tips that I shared today, know what to expect, know what your weaknesses are, and know why you're taking the IELTS test, are very important for reaching your IELTS success. I hope they were helpful for you. Would you leave a comment to let me know if this was helpful for you? Or perhaps if you have a question. I help students all the time and would be happy to help you if you have questions. Also, would you like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends? When you work together with friends, you get more energy and motivation to finish, and I want you to finish well. So let's work together and do all we can to reach that finish line of IELTS success. There are many other resources that are available on my website and on this YouTube channel. I hope that you'll take a look at some of the different playlists and make use of them to improve your language skills and your IELTS preparation. Thanks very much for watching. I wish for your success.